and welcome. Just want to welcome our Facebook friends to this lesson. And we're starting a new Parsha this week, the Parsha of Bahar Bechukotai. And just this time it's just Bechukotai. So
But it was both.
it is, but when you do the triennial,
Then I thought you just did Bahar.
I just did something and now it's not. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. All right, I just did something. It says, I like this because it says tag friends. So I tried that and and then it just changed the picture. So I had to find the screen again. Okay. Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe. Hashem spoke to Moses. It's not Vayomer Hashem, right? Bahar Sinai Lemor, on Mount Sinai, saying. All right. So here we go. So this is a famous Rashii, who's quoting the Sifra, I believe. Anyway, it says, Bahar Sinai. He says, Ma inyan Shemitah. What has the subject of Shemitah? You know what Shemitah is? The sabbatical year, right? Where you don't plant anything. You let everything lay fallow. Eitzel Har Sinai. What has the one subject got to do with Har Sinai? Okay. V'halo kol hamitzvot nemru miSinai. Weren't all the mitzvahs given at Sinai, at Mount Sinai? So obviously, my father of blessed memory would call this a rabbinic question, which means obviously that it's rhetorical, right? Elama shmita ne'emru klaloteha ufratoteha uvediktukeha miSinai. He says, but just as in the subject of Shemitah, of its general principles and its specifics, and every single point, Sinai, were stated at Sinai, af kulan ne'emru, similarly with all the other mitzvahs, kelilutehem v'diktukehem Sinai, the general principles and the specific applications were at Sinai. And it occurs to me that when you say klilotehen v'diktukehen, I'm going on a limb here, but it seems to me the difference between theoretical and applied, like theoretical mathematics and applied mathematics, and likewise theoretical law and applied law. So you need both, because the theoretical law gives you the context and a certain type of meaning to what you're doing, whereas the application of it deals with pragmatics and other things, and both are important. And it's like the oral law, the written law, and the oral law. Kach shnuya b'Torat Kohanim. That is what is taught in Torat Kohanim, in the Sifra. You go ahead, please.
Why is he commenting on that on Aleph? Because it did not mention Shemitah in verse Aleph.
He's anticipating the fact that this is an introduction to the Shemitah laws.
Oh, so he doesn't want to wait till it mentions it.
No. Because the Har Sinai part is the part that's not going to be referred to again in the rest of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
he wants to grab us right away.
Okay.
All right. And now we have something else. Venir Eli, and in my humble opinion, that's literally means, and it appears to me. So he's going to not necessarily disagree with that previous interpretation, but he's going to give an additional point of view, another way of looking at this, right? Near Eli, shekach pirusha. But the difference is that he's not taking again, anytime you can find a source that backs you up, that's a wonderful thing. That's a good day. And on the other hand, you have thoughts and ideas that, you don't have precedent for or support from a text to prove that you're right. So he says, it seems to me, shekach pirusha, that we should explain it in this way. Lefi shalom matzinu shmitat karkaot shenishnet be'arvot Moav, because we don't find that that shmitat karkaot, karka is land. We do not find the shmitah of land. Shmitah basically means to release, right? The release. We do not find the release of lands taught in Arvot Moav. What's the significance of Arvot Moav? Arvot Moav is the plains of Moab and refers to Deuteronomy, where Moses dictates, this is right before they go into the land of Israel, and Moses reviews the Torah with the Jewish people. And in Parshat Rashii, you will find a paragraph regarding Shemitah, except there it talks about not the release of land, it talks about the release of human beings, of slaves. That's what it talks about. And because that specific isn't discussed here, okay, that is to say, or what Rashii is saying, is because of the release of land is not mentioned in Arvot Moav, the Mishneh Torah. Mishneh Torah is literally a Hebrew translation of Deuteronomy, Deuteronomus, second law. Lamadnu sheklilotea ufratotea. We learn that the specifics, the generalities and the specifics, Kulan ne'emru mi Sinai, were all taught at Sinai. Even though in Deuteronomy, what we read here isn't mentioned in Deuteronomy, and what we read in Deuteronomy isn't mentioned here. In this place, we don't read about the release of slaves. Okay. Uvaha katuv velimed kan, and the scripture comes and teaches here al kol dibur shenidbar lemoshe, regarding, sorry, I don't know why that happened, I think I do, but anyway, regarding every statement that was made to Moses. Shemisinai hayu kulam, they all came from Sinai. Okay? Kelilotehen vediktu kehen, their generalities and their specifics, v'chazru v'nishnu be'arvot Moav, and they were reviewed and taught a second time in Arvot Moav, in the plains of Moab. So that's how Rashii understands this. I looked at Torah Temimah, and Torah Temimah talks about this as well, and so we'll take a quick look, and I'll see if I can do it justice. But here's Torah Temimah down here. Bahar Sinai. And look at this. He quotes Torah Kohanim. He quotes this, we know how Torah Temimah quotes. He doesn't do a direct quote necessarily. He tries to make it a little bit more understandable in his quotation. Just like Rashii, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. What is the issue of Shemitah regarding Har Sinai? I'm not sure if Rashii asked it the same. Yeah, that's right. Okay. V'halo kol hamitzvot ne'emru b'Sinai. And in fact, indeed, all the commandments were stated in Sinai. Elamash mitan ne'emru klalotea ufratotea b'Sinai, ufratea b'Sinai, just as with regards to the Shemitah, I believe here that we're talking about, its generalities and specifics were mentioned in Sinai. Av kol hamitzvot ne'emaru b'chilotehem ufratehem b'Sinai. We just had this, right? There's an exact similar quote. So you can see, by the way, how Rashii does this. He goes to the sources and he tries to pick out what sources he feels are the most helpful to us in terms of our understanding of Torah. All right, here goes. Aleph. Hashmita ne'emru klalotea beParshat Mishpatim. With regards, so there are actually three places, and I'm so glad, believe me, I'm so glad that yesterday I spent some time going over this, because there were some things that I really had to think hard about and study hard. So there are actually three places where Shemitah is mentioned. in Parshat Mishpatim, which is Exodus. It's the Parsha that follows Yitro, that follows the Ten Commandments. Many, many different laws added in there, and one of them is mentioned, the Shemitah. All right? Shesham nismach al haparsha shebeshem haneemra b'Sinai. Okay. With there, nismach al haparsha. Okay, I'm having some difficulty here trying to translate this well for you. For whatever reason was, I didn't have a problem yesterday, but anyway, Sham means there in Parshat Mishpatim. Nismach hapala parsha. To nismach, it's connected. Okay, lismoch means to lean on, something like that, or depend on. There, okay, maybe it means there we can rely on, regarding that. So this without vowels, this is not the easiest thing. It looks like shebesham and it could be shebeshem. But the point is, it says that there it is said in Sinai, right? Because it's in Parshat Mishpatim. So we can see, I think the point is what he's saying, is that in Parshat Mishpatim, we see that the laws of Shemitah were given at Mount Sinai, because that's the point of Mishpatim. There are all these other laws besides the Ten Commandments that are given at Mount Sinai. Pratoteha kan. Okay, so in Mishpatim, it just mentions Shemitah in general. It doesn't go into any specifics, but he says pratoteha, but its specifics kan. Okay, they're written here uketiv bahar Sinai, and here it's written that it's in Mount Sinai. V'gilta haTorah pam achat, and the Torah revealed one time inyan zeh, this matter, this business of being given at Mount Sinai, or regarding Shemitah, lahorot al kol haTorah. So it says with inyan zeh means the idea that all the mitzvahs were given at Sinai, or that this particular mitzvah was given at Sinai, lahorot al kol haTorah, to teach us regarding the entire Torah. So let me go back a little bit. Okay. As I said, I'm having some difficulty with the Hebrew itself in terms of understanding the Hebrew. So he's making this important point about the fact that Shemitah is mentioned in Mishpatim, and I hate taking the time to look it up right now in Mishpatim so that you can see exactly what it says there. But the point is, there it said, and maybe I just need to do it. Let me look and see if I can find it quickly. And I did look it up before. Okay, so let's see if I can find it. Oh gosh. So sorry. And of course, I couldn't write down the reference yesterday, right? Isn't that lovely? So, okay, so I'm looking it up quickly as. Here it goes. Okay, so if you want to make a note of it, it's Exodus chapter 23, verse 10. And this is what it says. It just says, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield, but in the 7th you shall let it rest and lie fallow. And then it says, let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave let the wild beasts eat. You shall do the same with your vineyards and your olive groves. That's all it says. Okay? But it is Shmitat Karkaot. It is talking about the release of land. And that's all it says there, those two verses. Verse,
Well,
verse.
it does go on and talk about the work right after. 6 days may you do work, but
It's
on
Shabbat.
the seventh day you'll rest.
Right, but it's talking about Shabbat, right? Or it's either talking about Shabbat, or it's continuing the subject of Shemitah in general.
Yeah.
All right, but it looks to no, but the ox and your ass and that kind of thing, it certainly sounds like Shabbat.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so it's just two verses, and that's all that's mentioned there. And here we're going into lots of details. All right, so let's go on. Okay, so I think it was important to see that and to actually see those verses. Okay. I'm trying to milk out, or to tease out the meaning here. Okay. I'm so sorry. I don't know the point that he's trying to make here. That's my problem. Okay.
Well, I mean, I have a thought, and it may be far-fetched.
No, it's okay. Please, feel free.
Meaning, but he's connecting it to Har Sinai, and it just now implied that, like, maybe all of them, but specifically this one was important that it came from Har Sinai. And when I think about, like, what Shemitah is, I think about, that a human being is sacrificing something that usually would meant to serve them, to serve both God and fellow humanity, and which are like kind of a nutshell of what the religious purpose is.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. You'll have to say that one more time for me.
Okay, so they kind of implied that it was specifically important that even though all the laws were mentioned at Har Sinai, obviously, but this one was specifically important that it was mentioned there. I think that you would just imply that in Torah Temimah. And my thought about Shemitah is that it's kind of a very quintessential law religiously, because it's dealing with sacrificing something that normally goes to serve you, which is your fields, your food, your olives, serve you as your trade and your sustenance and everything, but you're sacrificing it for both God and for your fellow people. So I see that as kind of quintessentially, a religious ideal in Judaism.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I wouldn't use the word sacrifice, okay? But, let me just say, and maybe we can find a better word. Here's the idea. What we read about this, both Shabbat and certainly Shemitah and Yovel, is the idea of ownership. And that is this intuitive sense of ownership that most people have, that they really own their property. And Shabbat, and especially Shemitah, comes to reinforce the fact that in the finest sense we do not own anything. That it's a way of reinforcing a belief that everything comes from God. And so I'm agreeing with you. In other words, I'm working with you on the idea that there's some reason as to why Dafka Shemitah should be the commandment that they teach this out from. But it seems to me that that's not the issue that Rashii or Torah Temimah is going into right now, as much as I do agree with you personally. But they're simply trying to work out the mechanics here, and he's trying to sort of look at it from a hermeneutic point of view as to what's going on. All right, so he's not dealing with the issue of why Dafka Shemitah. He's trying to deal with the mechanics of the fact that Shemitah is mentioned sort of almost in passing. You'll see. Let me finish it's not a very long Torah Temimah. It ends right over here. So let me finish up, and maybe, and it's possible I'm not fully appreciating your point, although I think I do, because I think it is the major point there, and I think it's a very primary religious point of view, spiritual point of view, is this meditation on ownership. But I think that here he's talking more about the mechanics of how you drush out this particular thing. And it could have been anything else. It wouldn't have mattered It's rather the idea, as you will see in a moment, that it's mentioned sort of in passing, that it's only mentioned in generality in Mishpatim, and here it's mentioned in specific. Excuse me. And he's saying that the reason it's said in Har Sinai here, you're going to understand in a moment. Here we go. This is beautiful. V'gilta ha-Torah pa'am achat inyan zeh, and the Torah revealed one single time, just one time, this issue, lehorot al kol ha-Torah, to teach us regarding all the laws of the Torah. V'atya drasha zo, and this drush, this interpretation, comes Rabbi Akiva b'Zvachim, comes to support Rabbi Akiva in the tractate Zvachim, page 115b, Dechlalot upratot ne'emru b'Sinai, that both the generalities, the general rules, and the specifics of those general rules were mentioned at Sinai, v'lo Rabbi Yishmael, and he disagrees with Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael are major interlocutors of the Mishnah. De klalot ne'emru b'Sinai, Rabbi Yishmael holds that the general principles were stated in Sinai, ufratiyot, but the specifics, that Ohel Moed, were stated in the Ohel Moed. Now this sort of casts a different sort of thing. This raises a different question, which is, what is the significance of the machloket between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? And on a gut level, I would have to say that my sense is that there's something mandatory. I mean, it parallels the issue of, why do we single out the 10 Commandments and the whole issue of Ma'amad Har Sinai? And the fact that what is the deeper meaning of Har Sinai, of Mount Sinai? What metaphorically, what symbolically does Har Sinai come to tell us that's different from Ohel Moed, which is another sort of parallel to Har Sinai? So there's a level of objectivity for, as I'm struggling to find good language to explain what I'm saying, that Har Sinai, in a sense, there's something sort of objective about God directly giving the first 2 commandments, that Moses being up away from the Jewish people for 40 days and 40 nights, totally actually 120 days and 120 nights. We'll just kind of discuss that another time. But regardless, being separated off, as opposed to his sequestration in the Ohel Moed, which seems to indicate a certain intimacy, as well as the fact that, of course, we know from what we read a couple of weeks ago in Acharei Mot that the high priest couldn't go in there. But we know from Mishpatim also, Mishpatim tells us that Moses used or was it, no, not Mishpatim, Ki Tisa, forgive me. In Ki Tisa, after the incident of the golden calf, we read this wonderful passage, if I'm not mistaken, about the Ohel Moed. I could be wrong, but I think that's where it is. I'd have to look it up again. So, what are Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael really talking about? So I hope that sort of sheds some light on the point that's being made here, and that the additional little piece that the Torah Temimah brings in, that both Rashii and Torah Temimah have something they want to sort of, they're intrigued by this and want to try and tell us more about it.
So is the point just that whether the details or the oral Torah was given at Sinai or whether it wasn't?
Correct. That would seem to be the case. Although there are pratim mentioned in the written Torah, right? So I agree with you. I'm so tempted to say the pratim are the oral Torah, but they're still compared to what was stated in Mishpatim and what's going to be written here, where you're going to see a lot of specifics regarding the application of this law are mentioned in this particular parsha. And this is Torah Shebichtav. This is not situational. This is a very initial statement as to what this law is about. Let me stop this now because it's 25 after. I'm going to stop the screen sharing and give people a chance to if there are any other comments that people would like to make, I would like to give you that opportunity. So if you want to unmute and comment, that would be great. Any additional thoughts?
It's so kind of far-fetched, but I googled the meaning of Sinai.
Yes.
You know what it said?
Tell me.
Well, it said it was related to Sinai, hatred.
Yeah.
And it hypothesized that the hypothesis was that the first commandments about God's particular relationship with the Jewish people were part of what breeds animosity towards Jews, but you have then a whole series of commandments of how to treat your fellow people, and Shemitah, even though it's not part of the Ten Commandments, is part of that kind of ethical way of the way you're taught to treat people, which I would think would be kind of meant to sort of go against, to alleviate that animosity.
Yeah. I have a different, I realize the etymology with sin'ah, meaning hatred, and I'm wondering, what occurs to me is that the first two commandments, and maybe even going on to the third commandment about taking the name of the Lord in vain, all represent God's metaphorical hatred of idolatry and how despicable it is on our part to show such a lack of appreciation of our divine creator by practicing idolatry and things that are offshoots of idolatry. So that's that's again not to undermine or deny the interpretation that you shared right now. But yeah, it's trying to find some connection there with that word that means hatred. Yes, Janet.
So in the previous Parshas where Hashem focuses on the priests and the high priest,
Yes,
priest,
sure.
and then gets to the people, and then now in this Parsha we're starting with the land. Could it possibly be that's the flow of giving the discussion? We're now going to the how to treat the land and how the land treats the people.
There's definitely a combination. I love the question that you're raising, Janet, because it's forcing me to look at things in a different kind of way, and trying to sort of again extrapolate and stand back and say what's the flow here. So we went from Acharei Mot, all right, that deals with a high priest. It is also, excuse me, the passages that talk about incest, right, and consanguineous relationships and stuff like that, right? And
Right.
yeah, and then right after that, which is so interesting, but I think it's because both going into the Holy of Holies and those consanguineous relationships, both those passages speak about when it's inappropriate. In other words, it talks positively about how the high priest has to go in and what's an appropriate way for the high priest to approach and gain the intimacy of the Holy of Holies. And in parallel, it's talking about the intimacy with another person and what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Okay? I realize it's very challenging on lots of ways. Okay, so then we go that, and then we go to Kedoshim, which has many laws concerning, essentially it's the love thy neighbor as thyself. It moves into that. Then we went into Parshat Emor, which went back to the priests again and the specific laws. And then we had the festivals. Well, the festivals are very land-based, and all the festivals have some connection to harvests and things like that. And now we're going into Bahar and the Chukotai, which are going to be the last. That's how we're going to round out the book of Leviticus. So it does seem like there's a flow there. It's
How you treat the land
yes,
treats you.
yes. So
as opposed to how you treat your other people.
well, how you treat the other people, you'll see, is brought in. Mishpatim basically connects it, right?
Right.
But
But now we're not treating people as much as things.
Well, it's how you treat the land, how you deal with the thing that gives you life, right, through those harvests, and who and the profit you make from those harvests and things like that, and how
And how you reward the land in
yes,
the harvest.
yes, you
by
do.
giving it a rest.
True, but at the same time, it becomes ownerless, and you'll see later that essentially we'll hopefully go into that in a nice kind of way as to how people now, anyone can now help themselves to what's on your field. They can't take it to market, but they can absolutely use it. And not only anyone, there's a very interesting law that talks about the beasts as well, that the animals can graze freely.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue is, if you have some of these crops at home, can you eat from them? And there's a drush that is that if that particular crop is in the field so that wild beasts can eat that crop, you can eat the same crop at home. But if there's no crop out in the field for those wild beasts to eat, you cannot eat that produce at home. That's in your home.
You have to give it to the beasts?
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It just...
Give
Okay.
it to the mice.
Whatever. But it just interesting.
Yeah,
how
the field is everybody. It's also yours, but not to work, but to eat from, right?
Right. Okay, we absolutely need... Well, actually, we're right on time. Let's get started. I'm going to thank people for joining us. Thank you so much for being part of this. I would love to be able to welcome you on our Zoom session if you have any desire to do that. And till tomorrow. Bye-bye. Okay.